Hello and welcome to another video. In this video, we're looking at visual design principles and specifically how you can apply them to your e-learning projects so that your projects look much more polished and professional. Now, a lot of these principles are taken from the Non-Designer's Design book, which I will link in the description. And I've just included a couple of others that I think will really help you when it comes to designing these nice professional layouts. So with that being said, let's dive into it. So the first visual design principle to have on your radar is contrast. Now you can see contrast on this slide between this white text and the dark black background. So you can have contrast in color, but you can also have contrast in size. You see we have these two equally sized circles right here. If we have one that's a lot bigger than the other, it's instantly a bit more visually interesting. Now, where you'll use this in your e-learning projects is when it comes to text, first and foremost. So you can see here there's a lot competing for our attention. The bullet point is almost the same size as the heading. So if we size that down, you can see that it's a lot more accessible and easier to consume. So we can have contrast in that text size, but we can also have contrast in the font weight. So you see if we make this a little less weighty, it just becomes even more visually interesting, as you can see here. So again, if we change that background color to something that doesn't give us as much contrast, it's kind of hard to look at and it's kind of hard to read. So if we just change that text color back to a dark black, once again, much more visually interesting and more easy to consume. So keep an eye, at least if you're just starting, keep an eye on contrast in size and also color because it will be important on both of those fronts. Now, alignment is another really, really important visual design principle, probably the most important one when it comes to placing elements on the page. So you don't just want to place elements randomly. You see here, if we just add this text box beneath it, we see it's not aligned, they're not left aligned, they're kind of just thrown on the page. It doesn't look amazing. So what I recommend doing is every element you have on the page, draw lines extending from the edges, like the top, the bottom, the left and right of all of those elements. So you can see I did that with the logo in the top right. I could have added some more horizontal lines above and below these text boxes, but we're going to just align things to the vertical lines. So you see what I did here? I just moved that bottom text box over so that it's perfectly aligned with the text above it. We can get rid of some of those extra lines now. And you can see on the left, those text boxes are aligned on one vertical line. And on the right, we have my logo and my website aligned to that right vertical line. So if we're going to if we were to place an image or something on here, we would want to keep it on probably that left line and just move the text up. So try thinking about this in your designs. Don't just throw things on the page. Think very carefully about how it's aligning with the other elements on the page. All right, and there we have this layout. It looks much better than this just because we aligned that text a bit better. Okay, so proximity. You may not have heard of this one, but it is very important. Proximity has to do with how close and far apart different elements are in your layout. So the closer that two elements are together, the more closely that they are related, or at least that's the impression that it gives. And the further away they are, the less closely related you're saying that they are. So as you can see in this layout, it seems like the text further down isn't related to the proximity heading above it. So if we move all of that closer together, now it's much more clear that these two little bullet points, I guess we could call them, have to do with the heading right above it, which is proximity. So keep that in mind. Spacing and where you place the elements says a lot about their relationships. Here's another example. You can see these two pictures are very close together and the headings are much further above. So it seems like the pictures are more closely related than the actual labels for those pictures. So if we use this principle of proximity and we move the pictures further apart and move the labels closer to the pictures, it's much clearer now that those labels are describing the pictures that they're associated with. So again, I just want to show that. Proximity says a lot about relationships. So keep that in mind when you're designing your e-learning layouts. Now, white space or negative space is, again, probably one of the most overlooked design elements. All of this space you see around this text in the center of the screen, that is negative space. That is a design element that you can work with. Long story short, with white space, you want to give your designs room to breathe. You don't want things cramped together. You don't want your button border, like margins, right up against the text inside of it. You really want to give these things room to breathe. So you can see here, the P in space is like going right into the text beneath it. So we want to, give that a bit more breathing room, make the design look a little bit more sophisticated now, and it's also a bit easier to read and consume. So you can see here, I have a picture of me with just a quick little blurb, but the picture is really close to the left of the screen and the text is right up on that picture. There's really not a whole lot of breathing room. So when I use negative space a bit more intentionally, notice the difference. You see? So, practice using this negative space. Don't make things too cramped, and your designs will instantly start looking more professional and polished. So I think you can probably see the difference here. Balance is another really important consideration. You want your designs to be well balanced. So I say here, think of your design like a scale. You want, both sides of it to kind of match up pretty well. So this slide clearly is not very balanced. There's very little space above the word balance. There's all of this negative space in the bottom left, and then this picture is kind of just thrown in over here on the right. It's aligned with the edge of our text box, which is nice, but we need some balance in this layout. So what we can do is move the text to the left, the image to the right, and now we have equal space above and below both the text and the image. So this design is a lot more balanced. We could probably work on it even further. I think maybe we can move these things in a little bit and it would look even better. But you can see the difference between this layout and this layout, and that's trying to keep things well balanced on the page. Finally, repetition. This one might be a bit harder to wrap your head around, but it is very important. Essentially, you want to repeat your design elements so that when people get familiar with them, they're not relearning your layout or your UI every time they get to a new slide or a new part of the experience. So a place where people really mess this up is with buttons. So sometimes people will add buttons to their e-learning and you're supposed to click them on the screen. On the next slide, you'll be clicking a next button in the bottom right that looks completely different. That's not a good user experience. It leaves the user guessing about how they're supposed to interact with that experience. So you want to keep consistency, and you notice we have these two buttons here, but they're different colors. The capitalization is different. You want to keep your button design consistent unless you have a very good reason for breaking that consistency. And whenever you do break that consistency, it will communicate something to the user experiencing that design. So that's why it can take a little while to really master repetition, and everyone can improve at it, myself included. But the idea is to maintain that consistency, except for when you really want to draw attention to the difference. So you can see here, you want to use the same font. Don't play around with different fonts unless you really know what you're doing. Again, consistency in font. Same thing with the font size. You don't want to have a size 20 font on one slide and then 18 on the next and 14 on the next. Just try to be consistent and don't try to work around your space constraints just by changing the font size. Instead, break it up into another slide and maintain that consistency. It will make your project look much more professional. And then the same thing with the colors, okay? You want to stick to a solid, consistent color palette. You don't want to just use colors randomly or just include colors because you think they look nice. You do want to be very consistent and intentional with your color usage. So I think you get the idea with the repetition. Just try to keep it consistent across the slides. Look into design systems if you want to explore repetition further, because that is kind of repetition taken to the next systemic level. And there we have it. Those are the top visual design principles to be aware of in an e-learning context. We have contrast, alignment, proximity, white space or negative space, balance, and repetition. So if you can master all of these, or at least if you can start looking for them and applying them to your designs, you will very quickly start improving your visual design skills, not just in the e-learning space, but also when you're designing print materials, websites, and so many other things. You'll see these principles everywhere once you start looking for them. So if you enjoyed this and got some value out of it, please consider liking and subscribing to the video. I really do hope that this was helpful. And I'll do a longer live workshop showing how we can apply these principles to a real e-learning project. So we'll really dive into it and apply the principles one at a time and convert like a poor design to a really nice looking design. So if you are interested in that, please go ahead and use the link in the comments to join the Slack channel and subscribe to my mailing list, because that's where I announce all of the new content and live events. And there's also just a really good network of other instructional designers and e-learning developers in the Slack channel. So I would love to have you there, and I will see you in the next video.